Hello, River Terrace parents. I'm Pastor Ken Bieber, and welcome to this fourth session of RTC Supporting Parents, a class, a resource, a podcast, both video and audio for how best you can take in the information. And today, the theme is long-term thinking and planning. We'll not only be hearing from myself and from Shalom, our children's ministry director, but also with a member of our River Terrace community, Jim Pignataro, on looking ahead to college, because this is for parents of children all ages, from newborn up through high school. And college is often the season when kids leave home, and we spend many years preparing for it. And not every kid goes to college, but oftentimes that is the what we're working towards. And so I thought it'd be helpful to talk with Jim, who works in higher education, and I think you'll find it really helpful too. So thank you for being with us today. With this theme of long-term thinking and planning, I thought it'd be helpful to look at chapter 1 of Romans. And because this fall, the Wednesday morning pastor study, I've been walking through Romans with people, and it strikes me that Paul writes to the church in Rome. It's a church that he did not himself plant. It's not like the church in Philippi, to whom he writes Philippians. No, this is a church that exists before Paul got to Rome, and existed probably before Peter got to Rome. Jewish people who had become Christian disciples, brought it with them to Rome. And so Paul writes in chapter 1, verse 11, "I long to see you so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to make you strong. That is, that you and I may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. I do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, that I planned many times to come to you, but have been prevented from doing so until now, in order that I might have a harvest among you, just as I had among the Gentiles." And in this book, and from church history, it appears that Paul, he had been on the eastern half of the Mediterranean, planting churches. His different, they're called missionary journeys, although they took several years. And now he was hoping to actually go to the western edge of the Roman Empire, to Spain. And that's because Paul was a missionary who was called not just to his Jewish people, but to the Gentiles as well. And so he was hoping to get to Spain, and on his way to Spain, he would spend time with the church in Rome. And when you look at that, Paul already has this amazing history of churches that he's planted, places he's preached, and now he still has his sights set west and into the future. And he wants to build a relationship with and mutually encourage, have encouragement from them and given to them, the Christians in Rome, but then go beyond the Italian peninsula over to Spain. And I wanted to share that with you, because for us as Christians, we want to be led by the Holy Spirit. And being led by the Holy Spirit doesn't mean we don't make any plans. It doesn't mean we try to have every strategic thought free from our mind, but instead we see a theme throughout Scripture, like when the Lord introduces himself to Moses in the burning bush and says, I'm going to use you to free my people from slavery in Egypt, and then eventually lead them to the promised land. Well, that takes decades to be completed. And with Ezra and Nehemiah and the rebuilding of Jerusalem and its walls, you see strategic planning there. And here with Romans, Paul is a Christian who is led by the Holy Spirit, but part of that leading of the Spirit is in long-term planning and hopes. Now, Paul says, I've tried to visit you, but it hasn't worked out, but still I'm going to try. And so for us then, as parents, long-term planning is part of the process. Now, there are going to be those unexpected turns. We're all in that right now with COVID-19, but and the plans we lay out may not turn out the way we hope. And we need to make sure that those plans are within our prayers for our kids are within the Lord's Prayer, your kingdom come, your will be done. And so as we look ahead, okay, like even if I have a young child, before I know it, and I'm speaking this from experience, before I know it, college and adulthood is going to be on the radar. And these years are going to go quickly. As I have this conversation with Jim, I talk about how my oldest daughter is now a college graduate. And I just think, where did that go? But part of it is, for Carla, originally homeschooling, and in our lives and vocation as parents and raising our kids, it involves that long-term planning. And so for you then, you can look at Paul and say, okay, Paul wasn't just thinking, what's going to happen today, but rather, this is what I want to happen in my service for the Lord. This is what I hope to happen. This is where I believe God is leading me over the coming years. And for us as parents, we've been given these children. We're stewards of that. And so we look ahead over the long term. And I want to share with you right now a quick video to give an example of looking ahead to the future. And that is with this fall, as I've been working with Carla and with the other adult volunteers with our youth. We're starting to, you'll see here, we have worship where so I just want you to watch this from our last youth meeting, which was outside. As you see in that clip we had at our last youth meeting, not just me leading worship outside on guitar, but a few guitars out there. And all the youth that didn't have a guitar had some kind of percussion instrument. And that was really Carla's doing. And what we're doing with that is saying to the kids, like, hey, you are part of the church, and we want you to help lead worship. And so training them at whatever level to now help lead in worship. And that is part of a not just the immediate affirmation to say you're part of the church, so you're not going to be part of the church someday, but now, so help lead, but also investing in them long term. So for some of them, this might be their first step to one day leading people in worship in our services. And that's a really exciting investment, but that's part of that long-term thinking. And so now we're going to hear from Shalom, our children's ministry director, and then we'll have the conversation with me and Jim Pignataro.
Hello, I'm Shalom Jaconet, children's ministry director here at church. Today I would just like to highlight one of the programs we have for our youngest children. Little Lambs is just a joy. It's a joy to welcome in 2, 3, and 4-year-olds, either online right now or when we're meeting in person in this room just off the nursery. Each week we tell a story from the Bible. We also sing songs and enjoy some activities that help children learn about God's love. So each time we meet, or each time they'll watch me online, we have a Bible story card, and I'll show it. This will be posted each week as well. I used to take these home, but right now I'm posting them. It's really helpful to look at these beautiful illustrations, and you're able to retell the story, which is always listed on the story card. There's also suggestions on the back of the story cards of things you can do as a family to reinforce all these wonderful truths that your kids are learning. So for example, we start by doing a little rhyme each week that the kids love to do with me, and it goes like this. Open them, close them, open them, close them, give a little clap. Open them, close them, open them, close them, fold them in your lap. And then I do a story call that sounds like this. Shh, it's time to hear God's story. Then we open God's big storybook, which is actually a giant book. And each week we lay out our story quilt, which is this green felt. And this is usually where the story takes place. For example, today, I'm going to quickly go over the story of God made all kinds of animals. Here's the story card. And the same story that I tell the kids during Little Lambs is listed on this story card. God's big world was beautiful. God made day for work and play, and night for quiet sleep. Then God made the big blue sky. God made grass so green and ocean waves. And God made the sun and moon and stars to light the big blue sky. God made tiny fish and great big whales to swim in the water. God made bluebirds and redbirds and blackbirds to fly in the big blue sky. Then God said, I'll make animals to fill up the land. So God made cows that moo and puppies that bark. Arf, arf. And God made furry bears and woolly lambs. And God made tiny little mice and great big elephants. God looked at all the animals, big and small. God made them all, short and tall. God said, my world is very good. We say, thank you, God. The words for today's lesson are from Genesis 1:1. It's from the Bible. In the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth. Then after the story, it gives some family time suggestions on the back of the card, which I'll be posting. This says, little children love pretending they're animals. To encourage your child's imagination, make tails from rope or strips of cloth. Cut ears from construction paper and attach them to headbands. Set out bowls of dry cereal and outline fences on the floor with masking tape. Then join the action. Walk and growl like a bear, hop like a bunny or kangaroo, bark and wag tails like a puppy, and so on. And then I also give another activity suggestion at the end. This week I thought it would be fun to use Play-Doh. We use Play-Doh a lot, and I know a lot of people have Play-Doh at home. I have Fisher-Price animals. It's fun to push these in, make shapes and patterns, make fences for them out of Play-Doh or habitats, or just use cookie cutters. Here's a cow, an elephant, and a horse. So that's Little Lambs, and it's just our hope that your kids will experience God's love in Jesus and begin to respond to the love as the Holy Spirit plants seeds in their little hearts. And this can just be used anytime during the week. We used to do it on Sundays, but this could just be their first little Sunday school lesson anytime you have an extra 5 or 6 minutes. So I hope that's helpful. And if you have any questions about Little Lambs, please ask me. But I'll be posting them each week. I posted one last week starting September 20. So every week after that. And if you want to go back and look at any of them, they're on the website and they are archived. So you can look at ones from the past as well. This will run for the duration of the school year. So I hope you and your little lambs will join me at some time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
I'm glad to have here with me for a conversation is Jim Pignataro from the River Terrace congregation. And Jim, as I talked with you, we're trying to support parents of children of all ages, from the youngest up through high school. And I want to encourage people with long-term thinking, and you're an expert in higher education, administration, student athletes. And so I'm grateful for your willingness to talk. And this will probably not just be this time, but from time to time to give some direction and framing for how people ought to consider with their kids in preparing for college. And so why don't you just introduce yourself and tell about your role at MSU and the students you work with.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to participate in these series and have conversations, albeit virtually, in this new environment that we're in. So I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, I've been working in higher education. Well, I was a student athlete back in 1990, but I've been working full time in higher education since 1994. And over the years, Ken, you and I have chatted much about even our own kids' transition from high school to college, but I've had the privilege of being able to work with 18 to 22-year-olds my entire career for over 25 years. And over the course of time, you learn and watch what to do and what not to do, and you hope that at some point you can give people advice on what would be best interest for their son or daughter and for their family. And so, based on my experiences, at Michigan State, I have been in academic support programs and student athlete development programs pretty much my entire career, but more specifically, I was the director of the academic center that was responsible for overseeing the management of the academic and personal development of students in 25 sports and 800 athletes. So over the course of my career, I've worked with thousands of students and really enjoyed that level of work. And it's very, very rewarding. And fortunately, I have some expertise, as you might call it, to maybe share with our congregation, and happy to do so via this Zoom.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that I think back a few years ago, my daughter Meredith just graduated from Michigan State in May, and I remember a few years ago, you, me, my wife Carla, and our daughter we met together, and you kind of talked about the different possibilities, because she had gone to Lansing Community College, was looking at most likely graphic design, which is what she did major in, and so I found it really helpful to have you kind of talk through the different possibilities. And so even though she wasn't a student going into athletics, we were grateful for your direction and input. And I think that'll benefit people here. And so if you would, why don't you with your initial thoughts you want to share with us on approaching college, why don't you take it away then?
Sure, I'm going to share my screen. I have a couple of slides here just to kind of guide the discussion here just a little bit. I got to from the beginning here. There we go. So preparing for college, again, I've served in the student athlete space and student space for quite some time, but these are three questions that I think are really important as you go through the process. I really enjoyed speaking with you guys those years ago, and it's hard to believe she's graduated college and ready for life now. But myself, I have two children, Allison, who is a sophomore at Oklamas High School, and Jimmy is in 7th grade. And, we're going through, she's a student athlete, and we're going through the process right now in her sophomore year, trying to select what's the best place for her to go to school. And she wants to be a college student athlete, potentially at the small college level. And so, these are three questions that I'm living real time as I'm sharing this with you with my own children. And the question of how do I choose the right college or university is a very broad, 50,000 foot question. And as you drill down into that, there are certain things that I recommend that families really, really focus on. There's no question that academics are important, right? I mean, clearly you have to have the right credentials to enter a school of your choice. And we stay hyper focused on that through especially the high school years. And then the second thing is we think about, how do I choose a major? How important is it that I know exactly what I want to do when I'm 17 or 18 years old, so that I have the right investment, the right credentialing. So when I'm 22, I get out in the college world and I can find a major. And I say that a little bit sarcastically because we all know at 18, what you know at 18 is not what you know when you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. And so I think sometimes we get very much locked into, I have to select that right major, and be locked in. And I'll share some data that suggests maybe that's not the case. And then I'm noticing of late, and I say of late, the last 5 to 8, maybe even 10 years, a switch in graduate schools being very important. Back in 2010, when we had the stock market issues and the economy really tanked, we saw a higher percentage of students going to graduate school than were going into full-time employment. And that included underemployment as well. And so, is graduate school something on your radar? Because I think that's a really big thing to consider. So as we go through this, where should I go to college? This is really important. Decide what characteristics are most important in that college or university. And some examples would be atmosphere and size, location, the degree programs offered, and there's interesting data that would suggest that you change. I have a slide here that talks about the percentage of students that change when they're from their first major to their second. But we often talk to our students about our prospective student athletes that are in high school. We say, can you really envision yourself walking down? I'll take Michigan State for example, since it's our backyard, Shaw Lane. I mean, these are the grounds you're going to be walking on. These are the buildings you're going to be around, and then the people that you meet during this process. Can you see yourself interacting with them? I mean, fit is often used a little bit loosely, but fit is really a good term. I mean, do I fit with everything socially? Do I fit with the just wanting to be here and the aesthetics of the campus? And you might say, well, that's kind of elementary, but it's really important. Small private schools in the last 10, 15, even 20 years have really invested in resident life. And so if that's really, really important to you, you have to make sure that you are very comfortable with the living situation. And I noticed, you can go throughout many colleges and universities have invested greatly. You'll see large institutions maybe not invest in their housing because they have such a wide net to cast and recruit students to. Michigan State's freshman class is around 8,500 students this year. But if you go up the street to Alma, that might only have 200, 300, 400 students in a freshman class. They have invested heavily maybe in their resident life program to attract students that make it a little bit different experience than maybe going to a large public university. And so as a family, if you sit down and just model some of those things out that are really important, and you say, well, how do I know that at 14, 15, 16 years old? You really don't, but you also know what you like and what you don't like. And by visiting campuses and looking through the lens of the resident life experience, the actual outlay of the campus, the resources they have for you to do the work that you want to do in your majors is really, really important. And I've often said too that the intramural programs. I mean, if you're someone who is very, very active, you like to work out, maybe you're not an athlete, but that's important. What kind of facilities do they have for you to be engaged socially? And so oftentimes I think, I focus on choosing my university because of the academic program. There's no question that is a key ingredient, right? That's why you go to advance your education. But these other things are important because students transfer because sometimes the other things are not up to their standards, or they have a bad experience with. So I want to share this to go ahead on a slide and we'll go back to the next one. When I was talking about majors, the majors are really, really important. Clearly for a direction for your own career, but take a look at some of this data that was out of the U.S. Department of Education back in 2017. Math majors, 52% of math majors switched to another major. This was data that was coming out of the 16-17 academic year. And then you go down here, I listed 7 or 8 of them: the natural sciences, education, humanities. I found that interesting. So what this basically suggests is that if you're a math major in this country and you go to college or university, there's a 50% chance you're going to change your major after you start. And you don't think about that potentially when you're choosing a school. So you tend to select based on the programs that you have, but make sure that there are other things that you might be interested in, because the odds of you changing your major are very, very significant and actually high. I'm going to go back to this slide. The second bullet point I have is preparing academically for advanced courses. There is obviously much discussion on AP or advanced placement courses for college. There's no question that that is something, if you are able to do, that is a good idea. Not only is it for gaining credit at the university you go to, but also could save you money kind of long term. What I have noticed now with the universities being so expensive is that a lot of students are kind of doing a hybrid model where they maybe will not under enroll, but enroll in a minimum number of credits and go to a community college in their first 2 years to gain additional credit and transfer those in. Most of the time you can transfer in up to, a certain percentage of credits toward your undergraduate degree, but as long as you're a freshman or a first or second year student, you can go to community college and transfer those courses into your first and second year experience. And so between advanced courses and thinking about what your enrollment's going to be wherever you go, those are opportunities to potentially save some money, and also give yourself some opportunities for taking different types of courses. So if you took, say, for example, AP history in high school, that would open the door for you to take maybe a different type of course, a more advanced course in any college, university you go to. And really in the admissions process, most universities and colleges like to see that coursework, but it's not required. I'm from a personal perspective, not forcing my Allie, for example, to take advanced courses at this time because she spends 25 or 30 hours a week in her sport. And so that is an important thing if she wants to be a college student athlete. Participating in volunteer community service activities is really important. You have to diversify yourself. I mean, think of your college application as your resume for a job, and having what makes you unique. 25,000 people apply typically to a large university. What's going to make you part of that 8,500, and what separates yourself from other people? It's really important to think about this as not only important just for life in general, but important for making yourself a candidate, an attractive candidate for a college university. And then in the student athlete world, those of you who are listening that may have a son or daughter a student athlete, the marketing of your student athlete is really yourself is really important, from the videos that you take from competing to making sure that there's roster spots for you. And offline, I can talk to people individually if they'd like to know exactly what that process is, because it's so specific to a smaller group of folks. So Ken, I'll pause there. I don't know if you want to ask a question or provide some insight yourself.
Oh, no, just as you were talking, I remembered how on the first slide where you asked about the student should have a sense of the place they're looking at, and for us, college visits have been really important. And so in kind of deciding on parental responsibilities, and my family has 6 kids, which tends to be a higher number than most families today, but that's kind of one of my responsibilities is scheduling and taking our kids on college visits. And so I've tried to prioritize that and make it, whether I take a vacation day or it's on a day off, spending time with that child. And then and in one case, one of our kids thought, oh, this school, I want to go there, and I know why I want to go there. But then the campus visit made it clear, like, oh, wow, this isn't the place I thought it was. And for us, it's kind of funny because we live right in East Lansing, and students walk through our neighborhood. And so for for us, it just we're not doing this to promote Michigan State University, but like one of my kids just graduated from there, another one just started there, and then another one, it looks like, is probably going to go there because of the program. But what's nice is it's this huge institution resource in town, and it's got, like, one of those college visits showed us, wow, Michigan State compared to some other places has such a pretty campus, so much green, and the different parts of campus each have their own look or feel. But I've really enjoyed those visits through the past few years with my kids, and they've been they really have been helpful to kind of narrow things down. And So,
I think for myself, I went to a University of Maine, Farmington, which had 2,200 students, and for me, academically and socially, I needed to be at a much smaller place. I mean, the largest class I had, probably was 20, 25 people, and for me, coming from a small high school, I played college baseball, so I had my own social network there as well. But for me, that was important. And you bring up an interesting point about living in a college town. Sometimes your son or daughter might want to go to just leave town and get out of town, but are you comfortable with that as a family? We often say with our athletes, how important it is that you get to see your son or daughter play the sport that they are chosen to play or being recruited to play. And I think there's parallels to how often do you want to see them? Are they prepared to live on their own? Are they prepared to go 6-7 weeks without any assistance? And I think 20 years ago, maybe that wasn't as much of a concern, but now I see a lot of more students wanting to stay more close to their family network and construct and support group. That doesn't mean to say it's good or bad or indifferent. It's just, I think you have to be really honest with yourselves as a family that what are going to be the stressors if this decision is made. If I decide to go to California, what are the expenses on top of paying for school to get there and live there and be part of that community? And finances are a huge part of that. There isn't, we're going to maybe in the future talk a little bit about the financial aspects of college, but we talked about your major, we talked about liking campus and just feeling comfortable there, but more and more as higher ed becomes more and more expensive, the finances are really driving decisions. And what I see sometimes is that because the finances are such a big part of that, you may make a decision to go to a place that is not your first, second, or third choice. How are you going to handle that? What's the support group that you have when you go there? Whether it's a local, are you looking at local churches that, whether it's a CRC church or another church family, that's going to be a place for you to kind of connect if you're not an athlete or aren't being involved in extracurriculars. That sense of community is becoming more and more important. And so again, it's so individualized. I mean, families really have to be very, very aware of that just because someone's giving you advice, a neighbor across the street or someone at church or even listening to us, that might not be the best advice for you for a family. And I think having those candid conversations and being involved in the process is really, really important. I actually attended Gordon College first and then transferred to the University of Maine. I wanted that Christian college experience. It was outside of Boston, but I wasn't prepared enough from a maturity standpoint to be 3 hours away from home, living in a big city and handling a rigorous academic course load. And so I had to learn on my own, at 18, 19 years old, that wasn't the right fit for me at that time. And we made a good decision because I actually have a lifelong friend out of that, making that decision that's dear to me, but academically and for sports related, that didn't work. And that's okay. And I think you have to be comfortable with that too.
yeah. Yeah. And like with our experience with Meredith going to MSU, I joked that like when we moved her into the dorm and then later she lived in an apartment, she lived a mile and a half away from home. But I think we both, her parents and she herself, we kind of put up a boundary where we weren't, helicopter parents always checking in, but at the same time, it was nice to see her a lot. And, obviously traveling home for holidays wasn't an issue. And so it worked out well where it felt like she had space, she was away from home, and yet, and it was a great school choice of school. But then I don't think I ever bumped into her unplanned. I mean, we would go out and have coffee, sometimes, but she felt like she was away from home, even though she was very close to home. But Dunk had just started, he's because of COVID-19, he was going to live at home anyway, starting out. And now, he's all online. So he's only been on campus like once or twice so far. So that hasn't happened yet because of the circumstances. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, no, I was just thinking, along the same lines, I have a colleague his son or daughter was supposed to go to Michigan State, but her cousin lives in California. And so she decided instead of living at home, she's going to do the online courses and live in California and have that experience with her cousin. So I thought that was an interesting, kind of take on that. But again, I think there has to be, you have to be really honest with yourselves of what you're really looking for,
Mm-hmm.
and don't get caught up into what other people are doing. Really, there are some really neat tools out there, like interest inventories, personality assessment things to show, as an extrovert person, are you available? Do you thrive in these types of environments? Do you need to be engaged in leadership things while you're in school, or are you someone that just wants to kind of take some courses, be involved a little bit, and work on the side and get your education that way? So and I think we get lopped into this. We have to go to a large private or a large public just based on how we live in the
Mm-hmm.
part of the country. But out east or on the West Coast, there are a lot of small schools that are very, very effective and get a great education. Yeah, I mean, I think uh, the one thing that is also an interesting point I wanted to make was, and might sound controversial, but you are buying a network when you decide to go to an institution. You're buying into the alumni, right? So if went to University of Michigan and I'm applying for a job in the CEO's company as a grad, you have an instant connection. Just like if I meet someone from the state of Maine with only 1 million people and I meet them in the Midwest, I have an instant connection with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's something to be think about. What are some long-term goals? So, the series is talking about long-term planning, but for your son or daughter, what do they want to accomplish? If they really want to get into corporate executive world, maybe going to an institution that has the strong business program and has connections with people who started companies are there. And so I think that's something to also think about. If you're going to spend anywhere between $50,000 and $200,000 to get an education, what is that education going to do for you? And there's more and more pressure on universities and colleges to prepare students for the working world, right? To prepare, like, what is the job I'm going to get? It's not, I went to the liberal arts. If you go to a liberal arts school, they're still having to answer those questions a little bit more now than they do it, I think, in the past. And the networks of these large publics are just tremendous. I mean, 600,000 living alumni or whatever that may be. That does help in the working world, but that might not be important to you if you want to be going to missions, or you want to work overseas, or you want to work, you don't want to stay in the state of Michigan or locally. You have to think about that. If you can think about that at 17, 18 years old and making your decision, you're really going to position yourself quite nicely 4 or 5 years down the road.
Okay, well, great. Well, thanks so much. Do you have any other last thoughts to add, or?
No, I appreciate the time, and I mean, people can reach out if they want to talk privately, but it sounds like we'll try to do this again maybe in the future.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you found all of our thoughts and the conversation today helpful. And I just want to bless you as you look at your child's life, look at what's to come, rely on the Lord, and try to do the best for your child in terms of not just guiding them through each day, but then thinking long term how best they might serve the Lord in this world.